Hey there, and welcome. Today, we are going to crack the code on all that lingo your vet uses. All those anatomical terms. We're going to break them down so you can feel way more confident and in the loop about your pet's health. So let's just dive right in.
You've been there, right? You're in the exam room, your vet is explaining something, and they say, we've got a superficial laceration on the caudal aspect of the right forelimb distal to the carpus, and your brain it just checks out. If you've ever felt like you needed a secret decoder ring, trust me, you are not alone. Well, here's the thing. It's not a secret language designed to confuse you, I promise. It's actually a language of incredible precision. It makes sure that every single vet, tech, and specialist knows exactly what part of the body is being talked about, which, helps avoid some pretty big mistakes. So, let's learn the basics together.
So where do we even begin with all this? Well, we start with the body's blueprint. Vets imagine these invisible lines called planes that slice through the body. It sounds a little weird, but they basically create a map that all the other terms are based on.
Okay, first up, and this one's super important, is the median plane. Picture a single line running right down the middle, from the tip of the nose all the way to the tip of the tail. It splits the animal into two perfect mirror image halves, a right and a left. There's only one median plane, and it's all about that perfect 50-50 split.
Now, any slice that runs parallel to that main median line, that's called a sagittal plane. And here's the key difference. A sagittal plane divides the body into unequal right and left pieces. So you can have a ton of sagittal planes, but you only get one perfect median plane.
So let's just nail this down. If the two halves are perfect mirror images, we're talking about the median plane. If they're off-center and unequal, it's a sagittal plane. Getting this difference is honestly the foundation for pretty much everything else.
All right, next up is the dorsal plane. This time, imagine slicing the animal horizontally, like you're separating its back from its belly. This gives you a top half, which we call dorsal, and a bottom half, which we call ventral.
And our last big map line is the transverse plane. This one's just a cross-section. Seriously, think about slicing a loaf of bread. A transverse plane cuts the body into a head part, we call that cranial, and a tail part, which is called caudal.
Okay, so we've got our map divided by all these planes. Now we can start using our GPS. These next terms are all about direction. They're going to tell us exactly where a specific spot is on the body.
The head is a bit special. It's got its own unique set of directions. Anything moving toward the nose is rostral. Caudal still means toward the tail, or in this case, just the back of the head. And just like we learned, dorsal is that top surface, and ventral is the bottom, like around the jaw.
Now, for the main part of the body, the trunk, cranial means you're heading toward the head, and caudal means you're going toward the tail. Dorsal is the back surface where the spine is, and ventral is the belly side. We can also talk about depth, too. Superficial means it's just close to the skin, while deep means it's, deeper inside the body. And now, the limbs. This is where things get really interesting. See, most of the rules we just learned still apply, but the limbs have a couple of really specific exceptions that you just gotta know.
But let's start with the easy stuff. These are the four main terms that you can use on the entire limb, from the shoulder all the way down to the paw.
So proximal means it's closer to the main body. You can think in proximity. The opposite is distal, which means further away, like distant. Then you've got medial, which refers to the inside of the limb, and lateral, which is the outside of the limb.
Okay, pay close attention, because this is the big one. This is the exception. Once you go below the carpus, that's basically the animal's wrist, or the tarsus, which is the ankle or hock. The language for front and back completely changes.
So on the forelimb, if you're above the wrist, you still use cranial for front and caudal for back, no problem. But once you go below that wrist joint, the front is now called dorsal, and the back is called palmar. The easiest way to remember that is to think of the palm of your hand.
The hind limb works almost the exact same way. Above the hock, it's cranial and caudal. Simple. But below the hock, the front is also called dorsal, but the back is now plantar. For that one, just think about planting your foot on the ground. So palmar for the front paws, plantar for the back paws. Phew, okay, we've covered the map and the GPS coordinates. Now let's put this language into action and see how vets talk about movement, and even how an animal is just lying on the table.
Okay, when a limb moves toward the center of the body, that's called adduction. You're kind of adding it to the body. When it moves away from the center, that's abduction.
The classic way to remember this one is that to abduct something is to take it away.
Flexion, that's just when you close a joint angle, like when you bend your elbow or knee. And extension is the exact opposite. It's when you open that joint angle back up or straighten it out. So flexion closes the joint, extension opens it. Simple as that.
And finally, this is something you'll hear all the time. The position an animal is lying in is called recumbency. If they're lying on their back, it's dorsal recumbency. On their belly, it's ventral recumbency. And if they're on their left or right side, it's just called left or right lateral recumbency. These are super important for exams and procedures.
So let's do a super quick recap. We've learned that the body is mapped out by those imaginary planes. We use all those positional terms like cranial and distal as a kind of GPS. We know there are some very special rules just for the lower limbs, and that even simple movements have their own specific language.
Remember that crazy sentence from the beginning? A superficial laceration on the caudal aspect of the right forelimb, distal to the carpus? Well, now you know exactly what that means. A shallow cut on the back of the right front leg, just below the wrist. See? It's a language of precision, and it's all about keeping our animals safe. And now, it's a language you can speak too.